Welcome, the anointed ones. Be careful whom you dig graves for. You may find yourself at the bottom of them. Every ancient wisdom and modern fable echoes this truth. The traps we lay for others have a way of springing back on us when we least expect it. It's a cosmic irony, really, a brutal twist of fate that spares no one, especially those who thought they could get away with crossing a chosen one. Here's a little-known fact. 85% of plans driven by jealousy or malice backfire in some form. It's almost as if the universe has a sense of humor, a flair for setting up poetic justice where the tables turn faster than anyone can blink. Today, we're diving into the spine-chilling reality your enemies are facing right now. They may have plotted, schemed, and laughed behind your back, but little did they know they were setting up their own downfall all along. So sit back, because karma is a force with a wicked sense of timing, and your enemies are about to learn just how real it can get. Number 1. Their trap became their own cage. Your enemies thought they had it all figured out, carefully setting traps and weaving plans, expecting to watch you fall. But here's the irony. The very traps they crafted are now their cages, and they're finding out the hard way that when you mess with a chosen one, every move backfires. They wanted to pull you down, to humiliate you, to prove that they were smarter, stronger, or better. But in a poetic twist, the path they set to ruin you is exactly what's locking them into their own failure. These traps don't look like traditional snares. They're the subtle, manipulative games, the whispered lies, the attempts to create chaos around you. They were sure their plan was airtight, confident that they'd created something you couldn't escape. They assumed they'd be the ones in control, watching as you struggled, but they didn't account for the silent forces at work in favor of those with pure intentions. The truth is, every bit of negative energy they invested against you is now circling back, amplifying their own misery and stress. What they thought was their clever design is now a relentless reminder of their own failure. Now, they're stuck in a cycle, trying to patch up the mess they themselves created, desperate to escape the chaos they summoned. Every time they try to cover up one trap, another issue arises. With each step they take, it only seems to tighten the chains they forged. They're left confused, angry, and wondering how their plans spiraled so out of control. That's the ultimate irony. In their obsession to set you up, they were actually setting themselves up all along, and now they're the ones who can't find a way out. Number 2. Your absence is amplifying their downfall. When you walked away, you didn't just leave the room. You left an entire void in the lives of those who once thrived off your presence. What they didn't realize is that your energy was holding things together, acting like an unseen force, stabilizing everything around them. They believed they were the ones in control, that they were the strong ones calling the shots. But the moment you stepped back, the truth hit harder than they could handle. Without you, their world was a fragile house of cards. Now, as they try to keep things from crumbling, they're slowly waking up to the fact that they depended on you more than they ever admitted, even to themselves. Your absence has created a gaping hole in their lives. When they can't simply ignore or fill it with superficial distractions, they're realizing that all those things they took from you, whether it was support, inspiration, or even just your steady presence, weren't theirs to begin with. They borrowed it all from you, and now that you're gone, they're running on empty. They're feeling exposed and vulnerable in ways they never expected. The stability they thought they had wasn't real. It was a mirage sustained by your energy and efforts. Now they're scrambling, trying to find new sources of strength and security, but nothing quite fits. They've lost that grounding influence you brought, and no matter how hard they try, they can't seem to recreate it on their own. They're forced to confront a truth that's both humbling and haunting. The person they tried to break was the very person holding everything together, and now they're left to face the collapse alone, realizing that they lost far more than they ever gained from pushing you away. Number 3. They're haunted by a relentless inner voice. Your enemies thought they could get away with their schemes, but what they didn't count on was the weight of their own conscience. Now they're haunted day and night by a voice that reminds them of every single thing they did to you. It's the kind of guilt that creeps in slowly at first, just a whisper, something they can brush off or ignore. But as time goes on, that inner voice gets louder, more relentless, refusing to be silenced. They can't turn it off, and it's eating away at them from the inside out. No matter how much they try to distract themselves or convince themselves they did nothing wrong, their mind keeps circling back to the choices they made. It doesn't matter where they go or what they do. That nagging guilt follows them, shadowing their every move. They're constantly replaying moments, remembering things they did, things they said, and the realization of their own actions is starting to sink in deeper than they ever imagined it would. They feel unsettled, anxious, as if something is watching them, even in their quietest moments. That's the irony. They once thought they were clever, untouchable, even justified in their actions. But now their own thoughts have become a prison, a cage where they can't escape the truth about themselves. They're learning that you can lie to others, but you can't lie to yourself forever. Their own mind has turned against them, painting a vivid picture of their wrongdoings in every idle moment. So while they might still appear calm on the outside, on the inside, they're battling with a guilt they can't escape. It's as if every whispered insult, every deceptive plot is now replaying in surround sound, reminding them of just how low they sank. And with each passing day, that guilt only grows louder, drowning out any peace they once thought they'd gain from targeting you. Number 4. Their success was always built on borrowed time. Your enemies might have enjoyed a brief taste of victory, but what they failed to realize was that their success was never truly theirs. Every step forward they took at your expense, every small triumph they thought they had won, was built on borrowed time. The progress they made wasn't sustained by their own strength or integrity. It was stolen momentum, fueled by the energy and opportunities they siphoned off you. They thought they could cheat their way to the top, oblivious to the fact that what isn't earned doesn't last. Now reality is hitting hard, and the balance is finally resetting. The advantages they took from you are slipping away, revealing a hollow foundation that can't support the weight of their ambitions. The victories they claimed feel shallow, even meaningless, because they lack the satisfaction that comes from real accomplishment. They tried to cut corners, take shortcuts, and undermine you, but life has a way of evening the scales. They're finding out that borrowed time has an expiration date, and theirs is fast approaching. One by one, the things they valued, their influence, their reputation, the stability they boasted about, are fading, losing relevance as quickly as they gained it. It's a humbling experience to realize that all the things they thought were secure were actually fragile, propped up by stolen efforts and fleeting luck. As the facade crumbles, they're left with nothing to show for all their manipulations and schemes. The hollow victories they once flaunted are turning to dust, leaving them standing in the ruins of their own making. Now they're forced to confront the truth. Real success can't be built by taking from others. Every illusion they created is collapsing, and they're left watching helplessly as it all slips away, piece by piece. Number 5. They can't escape the ripple of your growth. Your growth was never something they could contain. Even though they tried to block, distract, or discourage you while they wasted energy scheming and hoping you'd falter, you kept pushing forward, evolving into something stronger and wiser. Now, your progress has reached a point where it can't be ignored. It's become a force that not only lifts you up, but shakes everything around you. The momentum you've built is powerful, creating a ripple effect that's changing the landscape for everyone involved, including your enemies. The irony is that the more you rise, the more they're forced to confront the uncomfortable truth of their own stagnation. Every new level you reach is a reminder of the heights they could have achieved had they spent their time building up instead of tearing you down. It's as if your growth has become a mirror, reflecting their lack of progress back at them. They're watching you break boundaries they thought would hold you back, and with each step you take, they're left standing in the shadows of what could have been. This isn't something they can run from or deny. Your rise is like sunlight. It's there, undeniable, illuminating the gaps and insecurities they've tried so hard to mask. They're struggling to avoid the glow of your success, but there's nowhere left to hide. It's a humbling, even humiliating experience for them to see you thrive while they remain stuck in the same place, forced to face the reality they once tried so hard to ignore. Ultimately, they're realizing that your journey is unstoppable, a force too powerful to be dimmed. The more they watch you grow, the more it unsettles them, because it highlights exactly what they lack, and no amount of denial or distraction can change that. Number 6. The universe has turned their allies to doubters. Your enemies once felt confident in their power, bolstered by allies who stood by them and played along with their schemes. They believed that by gathering a circle of people who shared their resentment or bought into their manipulations, they'd have an unbreakable network to bring you down. But here's the twist. The universe has a remarkable way of bringing the truth to light, and slowly those allies are beginning to see through the facade. The loyalty they once held to your enemies is weakening as doubt seeps into their minds, and loyalty starts shifting. These allies are realizing that they've sided with someone who wasn't entirely honest. They're seeing cracks in the stories they were told, noticing inconsistencies that revealed the truth. Their allegiance was based on manipulation, not integrity. They now recognize that they've been pulled into someone else's vendetta, someone who isn't as upright or justified as they once claimed. As that realization settles in, the loyalty they felt is turning to mistrust and skepticism. The universe is orchestrating a poetic shift, and your enemies are left dealing with the consequences. The betrayal they once aimed at you has cycled back, creating betrayal within their own circle. Allies who were once steadfast are pulling back, doubting motives, questioning intentions, and distancing themselves from a sinking ship. The ones they leaned on, counted on, and conspired with are now the very people walking away, leaving your enemies to confront the fallout alone. It's an unraveling they never anticipated. They assumed they could control the narrative indefinitely, but the truth has a way of making itself known. Now, their circle is fragmenting. The loyalty they took for granted is disappearing, and the support they once wielded is vanishing, one ally at a time. Number 7. Every step forward for you is their reminder of failure. Every step you take forward is like a mirror reflecting their own failure back at them, and they can't look away. No matter how much they tried to derail you, here you are, moving ahead with strength they underestimated and resilience they could never match. Your progress, each milestone, each success, is proof that they were never powerful enough to hold you back, and that's the bitter truth they're now forced to live with. Every single attempt to sabotage you only fueled your growth as you keep rising. It's not just your achievements they're seeing. They're facing the reality of their own limitations. They threw everything they had at you, expecting you to crack. But all they see now is someone who not only survived, but thrived. It's an unspoken testament to your strength and a stark reminder of their own weakness. What's worse for them is they can't seem to stop watching. They're drawn to your journey, compelled to see what you accomplish next, even though every new level you reach erodes their sense of self-worth a little more. Deep down, they're realizing that they lost the moment they tried to break you. Their attempts to undermine you have backfired, becoming a constant source of frustration, a reminder of all they couldn't achieve. With each of your successes, they're haunted by the realization that they wasted energy trying to tear down someone who was simply unbreakable. And now, while you're focused on reaching new heights, they're left replaying their failures, aware that every win of yours is a reminder of how completely they underestimated you and how utterly they failed. Number 8. They're forced to confront their own mediocrity. Your success has become a relentless mirror, reflecting back everything they wish they could ignore about themselves. They once saw themselves as powerful, capable, even exceptional, but now, faced with your growth and resilience, they're starting to see the limits of their own abilities, and it's hitting them hard. They wanted to believe they were ahead, superior, but your perseverance and progress reveal a truth they've tried to outrun. They relied on tearing others down to feel important, and without that, they don't have much to show for themselves. Every step you take forward reminds them of the gap between what they pretend to be and who they actually are. They're beginning to realize that while they were busy focusing on your path, they neglected their own potential and growth. They chose shortcuts and schemes instead of real work and genuine self-improvement. And now they're forced to confront the result. An ordinary, stagnant version of themselves they never wanted to admit was real. The worst part for them is that they can't escape this realization. Your progress stands as a constant reminder that true power comes from within, from resilience, consistency, and integrity. They're seeing, possibly for the first time, that the strength they projected was built on nothing but illusion. They're left with the raw, uncomfortable truth that they are not the exceptional figures they once imagined. It's a brutal, humbling moment, realizing that they have to look up to you now, not just as a reminder of what they couldn't destroy, but of what they never had the courage or capability to become. Number 9. Their attempts at control. Now control them. In their desperate attempts to control you, your enemies have unwittingly chained themselves to the very tactics they once used to manipulate and undermine you. Their obsession with trying to dictate your moves, to trap you in their narratives, has turned into a prison of their own making. They're now caught in a never-ending cycle of plotting, scheming, and revisiting old grudges, all in the futile hope that they can still bend your will to their desires. But the reality is, the more they try to control you, the more they lose control of themselves. Their energy, which once could have been directed toward their own growth or building something positive, is now consumed by the need to control someone who is already free. They're constantly fixating on you, replaying the past in their minds, and trying to strategize their next move. But instead of moving forward with their own lives, they're stuck, trapped in the mental cage of their own bitterness and obsession. They're no longer in control of the situation. They've become slaves to their own vendetta, slaves to the negative energy they've invested in you. It's a tragic irony. They wanted to dominate, to reduce you to a mere player in their game, but all that energy they expended trying to hold you down has only served to bind them tighter to their own futile attempts. They're shackled by their need to control someone who, in reality, can't be controlled. Meanwhile, you've moved beyond their reach, free to evolve and thrive, while they remain imprisoned by their own destructive impulses. They're locked in a battle that they've already lost, and the more they fight, the more they prove they're only controlling themselves into a never-ending cycle of defeat. Number 10. The trust they manipulated has turned to mistrust. The very web of manipulation they once wove so skillfully is now starting to unravel before their eyes. The people they used to control, the ones they turned against you with lies and deceit, are now beginning to see through the facade. The trust they built by feeding half-truths and creating division has transformed into suspicion and doubt. Lies, no matter how carefully constructed, can only hold for so long before the cracks start to show. And now the cracks are widening, exposing the hollow foundation they tried to build their power upon. As those around them begin to question their motives, the illusion of trust that they manipulated is crumbling. People who once followed their narrative, believing the false stories and twisted truths, are now seeing the inconsistencies. They're noticing the manipulation for what it is, and it's no longer just about you. It's about the betrayal they feel, the realization that they were used as pawns in someone else's game. The lies they told have turned on them, and now the very people who once trusted them are pulling back, hesitant to give their loyalty to someone who has proven to be dishonest. Trust has shifted to mistrust, and those who once stood by their side are now questioning everything. In the end, their attempts to manipulate have only left them isolated, with the very people they depended on now seeing them for who they truly are. Their power was built on deception, but deception only lasts as long as the truth remains hidden. And now, as that truth surfaces, they're left standing alone, with no one to trust but themselves. And even that's a shaky foundation. Number 11. They are fighting shadows in the dark. What started as a calculated attempt to bring you down has morphed into an endless, unrelenting nightmare for them. They're no longer fighting you, they're fighting shadows, ghosts of their own making. Their obsession with harming you has spiraled into something far darker, and they don't even understand what they're up against anymore. Their every thought, every action is consumed by paranoia, by the false belief that you are still a threat. But the truth is, you're not the one they're truly battling. The real enemy is their own mind. In their desperate pursuit to control, to break you, they've created a reality where they're constantly on edge, unsure of what's real and what's their own fear projected onto the world. Their energy is trapped in a cycle of imagining dangers, seeing enemies where none exist, and feeling surrounded by threats that have no substance. Every time they make a move, they're haunted by the consequences of their own actions, haunted by the lies they've told, the manipulations they've set in motion, and the guilt they can't shake off. It's as if they're chasing a ghost that only they can see, becoming more frantic with every passing day. The more they try to control the situation, the more they lose themselves in it. Their grip on reality weakens, and they begin mistaking their own fears and doubts for tangible threats, creating an even more distorted version of the world they've built for themselves. They're trapped in a web of their own making, fighting shadows in the dark, and with every attempt to strike, they only entangle themselves further. Number 12. Their own ambition is now their curse. Their ambition, once the driving force behind their every move, has now turned into a heavy burden they can't escape. What they believed was a noble desire to succeed and surpass you was, in reality, a toxic mix of envy and resentment. They didn't chase greatness for themselves. They chased it to outdo you, to prove something to themselves and others, but mostly to tear you down. And now, that very ambition, fueled by comparison rather than purpose, has become a curse they can't escape. While you've moved forward with a sense of peace, grounded in your own purpose, they are stuck in a perpetual state of dissatisfaction. No matter how much they achieve, it never feels enough. The constant comparison, the need to one-up you, has hollowed out their sense of accomplishment. Every success they achieve feels like an empty victory because they were never competing against themselves. They were competing against you. But now, you're no longer their focus. You've evolved, you've found your peace, and they're left chasing shadows, grasping for something that feels elusive. The problem with their ambition is that it was never rooted in a desire to grow or improve. It was all about winning at any cost, proving something to an invisible audience, and keeping score of who was ahead. And now, every time they hit a milestone, it only reminds them that they've lost what truly matters. Their drive has become a hollow pursuit, a void that no achievement, no matter how grand, can ever fill. Instead of building towards something meaningful, they're caught in an endless cycle of trying to outrun their own dissatisfaction, with nothing to show but emptiness and regret. In the end, everything that your enemies thought would break you has become the very thing that unravels them. Their schemes, their manipulations, and their obsession with controlling you have only served to expose their own weaknesses and insecurities. Every step they took to undermine your progress has only accelerated their downfall. As you continue to rise, they are left to confront the ghosts of their own making, caught in a relentless cycle of jealousy, fear, and dissatisfaction. They thought they were playing the game, but what they failed to realize is that the game was never about competition. It was about growth, resilience, and authenticity. You didn't need to tear others down to rise. You simply kept moving forward, anchored in your truth. And now, as they fight shadows and wrestle with the consequences of their own actions, they can't help but watch as their world crumbles around them. The universe has a way of balancing things, of bringing to light what was once hidden, and your enemies are living proof of this cosmic law. Their manipulation has transformed into mistrust, their ambition into a curse, and their desperate attempts to control you have only imprisoned them. As they struggle with the collapse of their false victories, they're forced to watch you thrive, a reminder that true power comes not from tearing others down, but from elevating yourself in the face of adversity. So let them stew in their paranoia. Let them face the consequences of their deceit. Because while they're stuck in the web of their own making, you are free, unshackled, and unstoppable. The tables have turned, and now they're the ones left in the shadows, watching as you claim the victory they never saw coming. If this message resonated with you, if you feel the energy of the universe shifting in your favor, make sure you don't miss out on what's coming next. Hit that subscribe button, join the family, and stay tuned for more truth, power, and the clarity you need to continue thriving while your enemies face the consequences of their actions. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Subscribe now, and let's rise together. God bless you. God